What's going on, you little love puffs, and welcome to another episode of Thoughts from the Toilet with me, Rick Eldridge. And as always, this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Home Cook and Delivered, the easy way for you to have food, fresh home cooked food delivered to your door. So feed your granny. Head to their Facebook by searching Home Cook and Delivered or going to their website www.homecookanddelivered.net. Now, summer is upon us. You know how it is. We haven't dieted, we haven't trained, we look in the mirror, we're disgusted. Strength and Performance Southampton pride themselves on their hard work to get your weight loss or your muscle gain. Head to their Facebook Strength and Performance Southampton or to their Instagram Strength and Performance Southampton to check out their work and sign up with them today. Next Generation Martial Arts Southampton pride themselves on being Southampton's friendliest mixed martial arts gym. Head to their website www.ngma.co.uk, check out the gallery, check out the team and sign up for your first free session there. And as always, a massive shout out to Mission Mental Health Podcast, talking about the most taboo subject there is to talk about, and that is depression, anxiety and general mental health. Find them on Facebook by searching Mission Mental Health and follow their podcast and keep up to date.
Last night, I don't know where I put my keys. I was tired and fell asleep beneath an oak tree. I bet my mother's proud of me, from each scar upon my knuckle and each graze upon my knee. And all I know is I got a cab and then threw up upon his car seat. He kicked me out and then I walked in the rain. I tell myself in every way I won't be doing this again, and tomorrow's a brand new day. Someone told me, always say what's on your mind, and I am only being honest with you. I get lonely and make mistakes from time to time. Say no main call, yeah. Baby, I bet, yeah. Oh, baby, I bet, yeah.
Welcome to episode 4 of Thoughts from the Toilet. Thank you for joining me, thank you for tuning in, thank you for listening, liking and sharing. As always, it is appreciated. And I'm trying to get this podcast on different platforms because I'm aware that the platforms I've been using recently are difficult for some people to tune into. So I'm trying to make it easy and more accessible for everyone because, you know, if you're new to this podcast, the aim of it is to just spread some love. Everywhere you look in, you know, the news, the headlines, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, is negativity. And the aim of this podcast is to bring some light back into the world, bring some smiles to your faces and, you know, just uplift that dark mood, which sometimes, you know, that dark cloud, which is sometimes over your head. But thanks for being here with me. I appreciate it. I hope you're all well. I hope you've all been busy and enjoying the weather. And I think, this weather we're having, like recently, obviously, if you look outside the window now and you live where I live, it's a lovely, beautiful summer's day. And I think that the good weather that we're experiencing is such a, a natural, antidepressant. You know, you see these places like, Norway and Finland, maybe Finland, I'm not too sure, but you know, Norway, Iceland, I know Norway definitely, they have a very, very high suicide rate. And I believe they put it down to how dark it is there, all the time. You know, there's a few days throughout the year where it is just pure darkness. There is no light, or light as we know it, you know, not enough light to keep us happy or keep us going. So they have a very high suicide rate there, and that's a shame. But it's been put down to the darkness, I believe. And, you know, they can't sell, I might be wrong. If anyone's been to Norway, then please do let me know if I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure they can't sell things like alcohol in the shops, or certain alcohols in the shops, because you know, people have been known to be using that towards the suicide, which is a great shame. You know, at any point anyone commits suicide is a shame. When you get to the point where you're so unhappy, you feel like the only way out is to end your life, then, boy, that's awful. That is not good. But yeah, man, I think this weather is a real natural antidepressant, unless you are a hay fever sufferer. I've always said that pollen is nature's fart. And I strongly believe that, because no one appreciates the fart and no one appreciates the pollen unless you're a bumblebee. And bumblebees are good. I like bumblebees, but they like pollen. I don't. And I've never suffered with hay fever up until this year. It's been quite bad. I don't know if I'm coming across like sniffly or stuffy on the microphone, but in my ears, in my head, I sound okay. But sometimes my head plays tricks. Sometimes it lets me see things that aren't actually there, or I hear things. Like sometimes I hear my phone go off, or my phone vibrate, or I feel my phone vibrate, and when I look, there's nothing there. So sometimes that's your brain playing tricks, and your brain will do that because your brain's powerful. Like, I think your brain is sometimes more powerful than you, because your brain runs you. So your brain has the final say on anything you do, makes all your decisions for you. It just allows you to do whatever you want, but in a way it's doing what it wants to do. And it's very selfish, the brain, because when you're a kid, the first thing, when you start to learn to ride a bike, the first thing your brain says is put a helmet on. Protect me. So, that's that brain being selfish. And if you give your brain the wrong type of fuel, then it goes erratic. If you have lots of sugar, your brain goes into sort of overdrive, and it makes you run around a lot. And if you have sugar at night, it'll make you have very vivid dreams. So your brain is really clever. And imagine just a brain with no body. Like if a brain could just operate on its own. Like if brains were just a thing, if humans were one thing and then a brain was just another, where the brain doesn't need a body to function. And maybe one day we'll get to that. And that's quite a scary thought. Just a whole world of brains just running around doing, making bad decisions. But, one day that might happen. Who knows? But yeah, getting back to it. I think this weather is such an uplifting, good thing. If I don't feel great, go out for a walk in this nice weather. And 9 times out of 10, that will change. Your mood will change just by soaking up some of the natural vitamin D and just being out there and breathing in the fresh air or breathing in that fresh pollen. But, if you're a pollen hay fever sufferer, if you suffer from nature's fart, you have my sympathy and my utmost respect, because going through day-to-day things is not easy when you have hay fever. But yeah, as I said, I'm trying to get myself onto different platforms now, so you can expect to find this podcast now on more easily accessible places like SoundCloud or YouTube. And I'm hoping in doing that I can share it onto Facebook, and it's just easy. It's a bit easier now. It's one click to listen. It's not something you have to sign up to, because I appreciate you guys listening. If anyone is listening. If anyone listens, I appreciate it. And I just want to make it easy enough for you. But you know what happened the other day? Hannah texted me. She left for work and she texted me and she said there's an ill hedgehog in the road. And I am a sucker for hedgehogs. I love hedgehogs. And I know that if a hedgehog is out in the daylight, it's probably disorientated, it's probably ill, it's probably in need of looking after. But they say the worst thing you can do is, pick it up and move it. But sometimes them hedgehogs can have hypothermia from being out all night. So I told myself I was going to go and save it. So I got a box ready with some cloths in it, and I was going to make a little hot water bottle for this hedgehog. To try and, revitalise it. I was going to keep it with me all day and keep it under my watchful eye and feed it. But when I got there, it was dead. So Hannah had actually just seen a dead hedgehog, and got me excited to go and have maybe a new pet. But yeah, I got there and it was dead, so that was a shame. So I just left it where it was. Rest in peace to that hedgehog. But then a few days later, we were driving down the road, and the hedgehog had gone. And I'm sure it was dead because it was not moving. I touched it and it didn't respond, and there was flies sort of eating it. So I'm 75% sure it was dead, unless it was, maybe it, because we've got a lot of alcoholics around the around our area. They just sit there and they drink all day. They don't cause too many problems. They sometimes cause a mess, but they don't cause too many problems. They just sit there, watch the world go by, and they just drink. So maybe this hedgehog had got into the remains of one of their bottles of alcohol and drank it, and it was just maybe in an alcoholic coma. That's what I thought anyway, until I saw that someone had moved the hedgehog into the road, and then obviously the traffic had squished it, and that upset me because that hedgehog didn't want to die in the first place. I'm sure it died of what I can only assume is natural causes. I'm not a vet. I didn't do any sort of post-mortem or autopsy on this particular hedgehog. But yeah, some evil soul had moved it into the road, and it had been flattened by the traffic and by the vehicles, which is a shame. Because you should just leave it to leave nature to do its thing. Something, maybe a fox will come along and eat it. I'm not too sure if foxes eat hedgehogs, because obviously they have spikes. So I don't know, maybe it's a good defense mechanism for the hedgehog where they don't get eaten. But nature would most certainly have taken care of that situation, because there's not a lot that nature can't sort out. So something or something or someone would have either come along and moved it or eaten it. So it really upset and annoyed me that someone had done that, because you just got to let these things just let nature do its thing. And I was playing with my niece in the garden the other day, and we found a stag beetle, a big female stag beetle, and it looked like it was struggling because that was being attacked by ants. So we scooped it up. You're not supposed to do that, but we scooped it up, and we looked after it for a few minutes. We done some research as to see what the female stag beetle's best habitat is, and it turns out they're best off living in soil, cool soil, so they can burrow, obviously to lay eggs. So we got a little container. We got some soil and some leaves and some grass and some sticks, put it in there, and we fed the beetle some water and sugar, to try and get it some more energy. And we kept hold of it for maybe 30 minutes, and then we released it again. So we're just out here doing little bits for nature and helping nature do its thing. But then I feel like I've been kicked in the teeth by nature, because I just try to help, and then all nature does is make me not be able to breathe through my nose. And that upsets me, because I like to breathe through my nose. And nature is also kicking me in the teeth, because it's making night times very hot. And I can't cope with being hot at night. So, I'm having to get the fan out. I'm getting stuffy. I'm having coughing fits. I'm keeping Hannah awake. So I'm just out here trying to help nature by saving its critters, or trying to save its belongings. Sometimes that's out of my jurisdiction, because nature's already done its thing. But then the ones I do help, and the ways I can help and save things, nature repays me by making me struggle, which don't really appreciate, but what can you do? Nature is powerful. And talking of powerful, who's got that World Cup fever? I, for one, don't like football or soccer or Liverpool. But, World Cup fever has taken me over. and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I get quite passionate around the Euro Championships and the World Cup, you know. And I think England played very well the other night. I see a lot of people, you know, scrutinising them, but I think we did well. But then I don't really know the ins and outs of football. I don't really like it. I used to like football. I used to be really into football until I realised that players, you know, are playing for the wrong reasons, or they're not playing for passion. They're just playing for money. It's just a job to them. And, you know, the amateur dramatics, the diving, the theatricals have sort of totally ruined it, taken the love away from football for me. So, but yeah, I get really excited around the World Cup. On Monday when England played Tunisia and made the World Cup debut, I was just listening to, I think it's called It's Coming Home, the England World Cup song. I was listening to that all day. And I got some funny looks when I was driving around in my work van and, you know, but passion, you've got to get passionate for these things. I mean, even Hannah came home and watched football, and she doesn't like football at all. Like, it's not as if it's not like me where she used to like football and just doesn't anymore. She just has never liked football. But she watched it, she got excited. She didn't really cheer too much when England scored, but I'm just glad that she sat and watched it with me, and that's great. But you know, I've not seen too much craziness in this World Cup yet. You know, I remember one year when I think it was Colombia, they had they all sprayed their hair yellow, and that was I don't know why, but the whole squad had yellow hair. I think it was Colombia. Again, if I'm wrong, please let me know and tell me I'm wrong and correct me. But nothing too you know, crazy at the moment. And I like craziness. I like to see a bit of people who are out there. You know, and you know, someone who is most definitely out there is you know, that rapper called Tekashi 6ix9ine. He's out there. He's eccentric. You know, he got rainbow hair. And I didn't think I'd ever see the day where somebody who has rainbow hair and is claiming to be a gangster would have such an impact on the world. But, you know, a couple of his songs I really like. And he gives his money, there's videos of him all over, you know, like YouTube and his Instagram and stuff, of him just giving money away to like the local community. And he's from Brooklyn in New York. And that's one place we didn't visit when we were in New York, which I'm gutted about, and I'd love to go back there and visit Brooklyn because I hear good stuff about it. But he's from Brooklyn. And I think he claims to be, you know, part of the Bloods, because, you know, they had the Bloods and the Crips over in America and various other places around the world now, I believe. But he claims to be a Blood, and he's got rainbow coloured hair. So, you know, I'm not sure if he's a real Blood, and the other real Bloods are a bit like, you got rainbow hair, you can't be one of us. But he seems like an all right character. He's very out there. He very, you know, he says what he thinks, and that's his brain. That's just the way his brain works, because people's brains work differently. You know, if he has a problem, or if he has something to address, he just, he pulls the trigger. And that's not me saying he's going around shooting or killing people, but, you know, he metaphorically pulls the trigger on what he wants to say to people. He doesn't hold back. He just, you know, he lets fly, which I suppose in a way is good. But the only problem with that is when you have such a big voice to the world and you are an influential character, you really need to sort of filter or monitor or choose what you say and how you say it. Because, you know, when kids listen to this and listen to how he goes on about he's a gangster, and, you know, because he keeps inviting people to sort of test his gangster, and I'm not entirely sure what that means, but that's just what he says. You know, when he says that and kids are listening to it, they're going to get the same sort of mentality, and they're just going to want people to try and you know, test them on things. And children nowadays struggle with tests as it is. You know, they've taken the pressure away from, like the SATs tests and stuff like that. So for someone else to be telling children or influencing children to be tested, I'm not so sure it's a good thing. And he also says, let your nuts hang a lot. In his songs and in his interviews, he says, let your nuts hang. Now, that could be seen as racist, because depending on where you're from, your nuts will not hang. Because, when it gets cold, your nuts try to hibernate away inside your body. And when it's hot, your nuts hang, because they're out there, they're catching that natural antidepressant vitamin D. And when they heat up, they're out there. That's when they hang. So someone who's from a cold country may see that as racist, because he's saying let your nuts hang, but sometimes that's taken away from you if you live in a cold country. So that might offend people. Also, that might get a lot of children locked up, because if he's saying let your nuts hang, I suppose it's a metaphor for show everyone how big your balls are. I suppose it means, don't be intimidated, or, if you say something, you have to follow it through. Sort of put your money where your mouth is in a weird roundabout way, but he says let your nuts hang. And if that could get totally misconstrued by some people, and that could end up with a certain percentage of the world walking around with their nuts out, and that's illegal in some places. A place where it's probably not legal is Vegas, because we saw when we was in Vegas, we saw just a woman, actually a few women who were just naked, but they just had their body parts painted, like their areolas were painted, and their vagines were painted, so you couldn't really see what was all going on there, but they were naked, and all they were doing was walking around and shaking a cup. They were just trying to get tips for just being naked. So Vegas is probably a place where, if you were going to let your nuts hang, that this is probably a good place to do it, because you get money for it as well. If you got a cup and you get your nuts out, you might get a payday, because Vegas is like that. Vegas is no holds barred. They say it's the city of sin, and yeah, I totally believe it is, because there's absolutely no filter in Vegas whatsoever. We got cornered by I think he was like a Mexican gangster in a shop in Vegas, and he was asking us about our life at home in the bedroom, which was a bit strange. It sort of took me by surprise, because I didn't expect a big bold Mexican gangster to be asking about that. He asked if we live in sin, and I gave him sort of a confused look, because we're in the city of sin and he's asking me this, so obviously all of us are sort of living in sin. So I thought maybe he was a bit of a hypocrite, or maybe he may have had a mental condition, or maybe he was, using illegal substances. But it turns out he meant, the old sex before marriage thing. Apparently that's living in sin. So it's a bit strange to be confronted by a big Mexican man and his friend, actually, who he was from Brooklyn, and he was quite intimidating. But I was there with Hannah, my lady, so I had to put on this persona where I wasn't intimidated by him, but deep down I was. But that was a bit strange. So there's all sorts of people in Vegas, and the place never sleeps, and I love that place, and I will be going back there one day. But so if you're going to let your nuts hang, do it in Vegas. That's probably the best piece of advice you're going to have today, because if you're just walking around Southampton city centre with your nuts hanging out, you will probably get arrested. And people do that. You know, a lot of people are walking around the city centre naked. You know, I've seen a woman walking around with no top on. She was an elderly lady, and she must have had a mental condition, or again had been using illegal substances, maybe some hallucinogens. But she was walking around with, her titties out, and she's walking up and down the busy high street, just with not a care in the world. So it makes you wonder, what she's put into her body for her brain to say, we're going topless today. I don't care how many thousands of people are walking around, this city. We're showing them what we've got today. She was just not a care in the world, just walking up and down with her titties out, and that's a bit strange. But that's what you get. Certainly you get that in Vegas, and you get that sometimes around here. But I'm not sure if she got arrested or not. Because I was saying, if you let your nuts hang, you're probably going to end up getting arrested. So, unless you're in Vegas. But I'm not sure whether she got arrested or whether she, lived to, get her boobies out for another day. I don't know. I can't comment on that. What else has been going on? Hannah's family just got back from Montenegro. And that's a place I would never think to go on a holiday. But, they went there, they loved it, and they said it was really like tropical, real nice beaches, real nice weather. And I was surprised because I didn't think Montenegro was a place like that, and I would never, ever in a million years to think to go on a holiday there before they went. But yeah, they said it was lovely. It's a very raw place. You just walk around the hotel complex and there's what's the word? Wild turtles and tortoises just walking around, and you can pick them up. Our nephew's got a picture holding a wild tortoise. I think it's a tortoise or a turtle. I don't know the difference between the two, if I'm honest. So if you know the difference, let me know. Write into my Facebook or into the email and let me know the difference between a turtle and a tortoise. Maybe it's something to do with one lives in water, the other one doesn't. Don't know. Not a zoologist, so let me know. But yeah, apparently a very raw place where you can just pick up wildlife. And that's cool because that's one, we don't have them sorts of things in this country. Unless, you go to a zoo. So it's good to be able to see and experience nature firsthand and in its raw form like that. So yeah, maybe if you're looking for a place to holiday, maybe look at Montenegro. And that's over by Croatia, I think. I just know Montenegro because of Serbia and Montenegro, and they're a football team. But I did not know Montenegro was a holiday destination. So they had a great time. They're all tanned. They're all looking bronze. So if you're looking for a new holiday destination, where you maybe you've been places before and you're running out of ideas. So maybe Montenegro may be a good place for you to check out because, it's only, if you live in England, it's only 2 hours on an aeroplane. And to be able to only fly for 2 hours and get that sort of place, I think that's really good. So definitely worth looking into. Now, there's a few news headlines which stuck out to me and were quite poignant. I think poignant might be a word. I don't know, maybe I'm using that in the wrong context. But the few news headlines stuck out to me. And one of them was in Belgium, a lion had escaped its pen in the zoo. And they shot it dead. They shot it and killed it. Now, I don't know whether the lion was causing a threat to people or, was going around and trying to, spray out on people and trying to urinate on them. I'm not entirely sure, but they shot it and they killed it, and that's a shame. And that makes me think of the hedgehog again, because it's just someone moved it into the road and it was flattened, which is unfair. And I think shooting the lion dead is also unfair. If you're willing to keep a lion in not in its natural habitat, in captivity, I think it's called captivity. If you're willing to keep a lion, or any animal for that matter, in captivity, then you have to be prepared for them to try and get out. And surprise, when a lion gets out of where it's being kept, it does lion shit. And all these people have done is killed a lion because a lion done lion things. I don't understand it. And that's not me saying I don't support zoos, because I've been to zoos. I've been to lots of zoos. But and I like zoos where the animals are well looked after. But you don't they can say that, but you don't know that for sure. But to kill an animal because it got out of the small pen you're keeping it in, and then done what is only natural to it, is wrong. It's like SeaWorld in San Diego, and this is not to slate them in any way, but they apparently kept Shamu. I think, was Shamu there? The Free Willy killer whale. I think she was at one of the SeaWorlds. Anyway, and they kept her in a pool, which when they put it to scale and put it against us, was like, it's the same as us being in a bathtub for the rest of our life. I'm not sure if that sounds a bit far-fetched, because every time I've seen whales at a water park or in a water world, they're swimming quite freely. And I can't even turn over in a bath without water going everywhere. And Hannah gets really angry at me for it, because every time I have a bath, I nearly flood the floor. So maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration on the living front for them. But I don't think it's the same as us being in a bathtub, because they can swim freely. Okay, it's not their natural habitat. Yes, it is probably still cruel, but they're there to entertain people, and that's not their sole existence. They shouldn't be in that captivity, but unfortunately that's just what happens. But what is doubly cruel is when a particular animal gets out of that captivity and does what it's supposed to do naturally, and is killed. That's doubly cruel. So that's just my thoughts on that. And another headline which I saw, Akon, the singer or the rapper or whatever he is, he's building a new city in Africa, and I'm not sure who's going to live there. I'm not sure if it's going to be open to tourists. I'm not entirely sure where it's going to be, because Africa is big. But he's building a new city, and he's building it with a new currency he's invented, called Acoin. Now, I'm not sure how he's done this. Is there a way I can can I make up a currency and just say I'm building a city with it? Because this Acoin currency probably doesn't have any clarity anywhere. So one Acoin could be the equivalent of maybe 10 pence or 10 cents wherever you are. So I'm not entirely sure how he's doing this or how he's going about it, but I think there's alarm bells ringing for me there. He's building his own city with his own currency. Something doesn't add up to me. I suppose maybe it's a bit like that Bitcoin. Maybe it's a fake currency, but somehow it's worth something in some way. So I don't know. I don't know the science behind that. I don't know his logistics behind that. All I know is Akon, the singer, is trying to build a city, his own city in Africa, with not real money. So I might just try and build my own city using monopoly money and see how far I get. Because this to me is like some Illuminati shit, because that's the equivalent of it. It's the equivalent of me just trying to build a city with monopoly money. And I would get laughed at by anyone who, caught wind of that scenario. But Akon, someone with a bit of press and a bit of reputation, he's famous, he's an A-list celebrity. He's doing exactly that. And that's going ahead, that's making the news. He's doing that. That's happening. But, that's the difference. I suppose that's how the other half live. But that to me smells like Illuminati. And I may or may not be killed after this podcast for exposing that and, mentioning the Illuminati. But we'll see. Hopefully I can do episode 5. Will the Illuminati listen to this? Probably not. I'm pretty sure, I've got about 4 listeners now. So, we'll see. But a very worrying headline, in fact, is a local hospital, local to where I live. One of the doctors there had been prescribing opioid medication. And I believe opioid medication to be things like morphine. That's my understanding on it. And she'd been describing that to people unnecessarily. And they've worked out that over around 456 people died or had their lifespan shortened due to her prescribing these unnecessary medications. That's 456 people dead because of one person. That's like an Adolf Hitler. That's sort of like genocide, really. But I suppose it's hard. Her salary was probably dependent on making people believe that this would help. If people didn't believe medication would help, would we have a health service? Probably not, because people would self-medicate. So her salary. So it's hard to convince somebody that one thing is wrong when their salary is totally dependent on it being right, or that you believe in that it's right. But, morally it's totally wrong. 456 people dead. There's cities in the world with less people than that. So in essence, she's wiped out a small town. Because she wanted her salary. And they're trying to get her prosecuted now. And you hear about this sort of thing a lot around the world, but it doesn't really resonate with you until it's your local hospital. Until it's somebody that had their life cut short or died because of this person. So it resonates a lot more with me when this hospital's 10 miles down the road. I've ran more than 10 miles. So it's right on my doorstep. And when I say I ran more than 10 miles, I mean in my life, not in one hit. I'm no marathon runner. But, it's a lot of people dead for one person, which is totally not good. And I hope she's prosecuted, and I hope she's exposed for what she is, and the families of the people that lost their lives can get some sort of closure on the situation. But we'll see how the justice system plays this one out. An interesting one that I saw, in fact, was from Indonesia. And I mentioned this on my Facebook because I was dumbfounded by it. A 25-year-old woman went missing in Indonesia. And they couldn't find her. Like, she's like, the city's or the village hide and seek champion. She's holding that crown. She's got that belt. She disappeared. She hasn't come back. And then they saw I think it was a python. They saw a big python looking very, very full up. And, they wanted to check inside this python. But obviously the only way to do it was to cut the python open. So, they cut him open. And lo and behold, inside the python's digestive tract. Now, to me, digestive tract is just a fancy way of saying stomach. I'm no medical expert. I'm no animal expert. I'm no expert in anything. So I'll just refer to it as a stomach because that's what I know it as. So inside this python's stomach, and I'm sure it was a python, inside its stomach was the missing lady. And obviously, she'd since passed away. But they cut this, the stomach open of the python and, they just removed this lady from its stomach. And she was still, whole, a whole person. But she just wasn't breathing anymore. She died. And that absolutely, that fascinated me. She might have just been walking to go to the shop to get some food, go and get a loaf of bread. Whether they, what they do in Indonesia, I don't know. Maybe they don't have shops to go and get bread from. But, she might have just been walking to go and get food. And then, saw this snake. Maybe she tried to run from it. Maybe she tried to pet it. No one really knows now apart from her and the snake, who are both dead. But, that snake consumed her. And, she's a whole human. The snake ate a whole human. Not in bits. He didn't chew her and eat her in bit by bit. He ate her whole. And, I know snakes, because I mentioned before we've got a snake in our family and she eats, mice. And, but when you see that, the ratio of, mouse to corn snake, the formula in your head is a bit easier to work out. But when you look at the formula of the ratio human to python, I think it's crazy how, that python has just opened his whole head up and eaten her. And that baffles me, but, they cut the snake open and they found her. Obviously she had started to decay and stuff, and like one of her feet fell off. I'm sure one of her feet fell off as they sort of tried to remove her gently. But her body had started to sort of decompose. But I'm not sure how long she was missing. But there's a lot of people, sort of heaving in the background because obviously there's a bit of a stench around her because when people die, they end up smelling, and that's not their fault. That's just the way it goes. So people were sort of heaving and gagging around her. So I'm not sure how long she'd been missing or how long she'd been in there. But yeah, they found her inside a snake, and that's it's a shame, that she died. But at least her family got to give her a burial, because there's nothing worse than losing someone and not being able to bury them. So that just got real deep there. But yeah, that snake ate her. And that's a shame because both now the lady and the snake have died. So really the moral of that story is, if you're going to wander around, in the jungle, then you should probably go in twos, or have a weapon. And if you see a snake, don't play with it, because they don't play with you. They just see you as food. They'll just eat you up. But hey, what can you do? Now we're getting on for 45 minutes on episode 4, so I'm going to start to round it up because, I don't want to bore you guys. You're probably bored enough as it is. So I don't want to, bore you anymore. But, I am going to try and make it this podcast more easily accessible for people on easier platforms, a bit more of an easier access. And I will hopefully have, like music in and out of these, podcasts and the episodes, but some some platforms I'm going to be using, they're funny with copyright laws. So, like SoundCloud especially, I don't think SoundCloud will allow me to have music, like copyrighted music in the podcast. I think they remove the episode totally. But if I can put music on, I will. So if you hear music, you're probably listening to it on a different platform other than SoundCloud. Or if you hear it on SoundCloud, it might not be up for long. So make the most of it. But I'll try and get music on there. I'll try and, I'm looking at having guests. And if you'd like to come in and be a guest on Thoughts from the Toilet, then get in contact with me and let me know. Happy to have anybody on, talk about anything and discuss anything. Talking is good. We need to talk more because, mobile phones have killed the art of conversation. So we need to start to rekindle the conversation flame. Because we're meant to talk. It's what we're meant to do. So if you want to come and talk or you want to discuss anything, let me know. Big shout out to all the people that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. Make sure you check all of them out where you can. And I'll see you back here soon for episode 5. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. As always, please, like and share. Your support is greatly appreciated. And be good to yourself.